Okay, I'll repeat what I already shared with you. We're really glad to welcome Dr. Jeff Beers, who teaches exercise science and is chair of that department. He has been at Manchester since 2006. He got his bachelor's degree at Ball State University, master's at Kent State University, and completed his PhD at Indiana University in 2018, which means that he has been going to school while he's been teaching here. Yeah. Okay, we're looking forward to hearing from you, Jeff.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate being here and inviting me and letting me talk about this. So I know Lucas Dargo was supposed to be here, one of my colleagues from Fort Wayne, but it's a little kindergarten roundup tonight for his little one, and his first one that going to school. So it'll be momentous for him. So I was like, goodness gracious, you go do that, and I'll go do this. And so in mine, like I told Jana, mine are old. I have a sophomore in college, and I have a senior in high school right now. So getting to do that. So I thought I'd just start off by just telling you a little bit about myself. Just give you a little bit of insight of what my family's like and those type of things, just to kind of know the speakers. And then we'll get into a little bit of what I do at the university here in North Manchester, and then kind of connect it to the Fort Wayne campus, as that is the case. So as Jen had said, my undergrad's from Ball State University, so I went to South Adams High School in Geneva, in Bern, Indiana, right, the furniture capital of Indiana, as they say. So grew up there my entire life. My father still lives in Geneva, Indiana. My mother's passed quite so many years ago, but yeah, I have 4 brothers, and so most of them live in the Indianapolis area. I do have one that lives in Bluffton, Indiana. But yeah, so I came to Manchester in 2006. And since then, didn't know I would be here that long, to be honest with you. Of course, I didn't know what I was going to get myself into, but I started here as a clinical athletic trainer. And so that's really kind of what my trade is at that point. But convinced my wife and them to move this direction. Met her at Ball State University as well when I was there. And so after that, we were both in athletic training. Got married in 2001. She went over to the Kent State with me for my master's degree. She didn't really like Ohio, to be honest with you. So Northeast Ohio is cold. Obviously, you probably know that. After I graduated there, we came back, worked some clinical jobs, and I worked at Taylor University for a couple years with my old college roommate. A good friend of mine still to this day. We had a great time, but the drive from Fort Wayne was a bit much. And so I was kind of, not poached, but asked, hey, listen, we have some jobs open in Manchester. I was working through Orthopedics Northeast at the time, to be honest with you, as a clinical athlete trainer. And so they kind of pushed us out to high schools and to colleges to work at that point. Well, since then, they kind of sold all their athlete trainers to Parkview, and then that's kind of where it's come from there. So I was an O&E employee here, working a couple of sports and doing clinical stuff. Never thought I'd ever be a teacher, to be honest with you. Yeah, I just kind of fell on me, right? And so, fortunate or unfortunate, you guys probably all know Dr. Mark Huntington. So Mark obviously was my predecessor there, and is still a great mentor of mine, and we still keep in touch. But he asked me about teaching and doing some adjunct stuff, so I got into it. And I was like, all right, I'll teach some of the young kids what I used to know, right, and what I do know. And as I got to do it, and I just kind of fell in love with it. So I was doing both. I was doing clinical athlete training, then also doing education and doing just teaching courses in, not really anatomy, but like evaluation and some modality stuff, things that were really just in my purview. And as I did that, I just became more comfortable in the classroom. And then as I got older, and then my kids started getting older, I got to missing more and more things and thought to myself, well, this kind of second shift job world maybe isn't the best thing for the family, for me. And marrying an athlete trainer didn't really help because our schedules were really bad. So my wife was working at Waco High School at the time as an athlete trainer, and so I kind of pulled back because Mark Huntington had gotten promoted to be a department chair, and then they asked me if I wanted to be a head athlete trainer, and so I just kind of did that for a while. As he got to be a dean, then I turned around and became the program director, and then became a department chair. And so at that point, I became a full-time faculty at that point, and then from there, really it's just kind of been written. That's just kind of what I've been doing. And so currently now I run the Department of Exercise Science. I have 2 colleagues in particular. One, Josh Brock, who is working on his PhD right now through Liberty University, is actually in our human performance area. And then Sydney Tillman is actually from Akron, Indiana, here and close to town, and she is my nutritionist. So our department now has grown significantly with Mark Huntington, and since then to have 4 majors, 4 different minors, 5 different certificates. And we're one of the largest departments, if not the largest department at Manchester University. depending on the year, right? Outside college business always has a whole bunch of kids. Education always has a bunch of kids coming in as well. But collectively we're all colleagues, and we're obviously all at that one Manchester University. We probably average about 140 to 150 students in the 4-year cohort and within our department, spaced out into those 4 majors and several minors, which is always nice. The clinical rehab science major, just to give you a little background, essentially is the one that would really feed into the program that we'll chat about tonight in Fort Wayne, into the health professions. Our registered dietitian program in Fort Wayne, which is nutrition and nutrigenomics, that actually would be, again, a feeder program from nutrition sciences up to Fort Wayne as well. So Sydney runs that program, and then Josh runs our human performance program like that. And those students typically will sit for a strength and conditioning certification at the end of their college career. Once they graduate and they pass that exam, then they would have their CSCS credential, which is really the highest credential you can get in that field. So we're really just trying to set our students up for the best success they can to get into graduate school and be professionals in the health field, as well as working in the strength and conditioning world as a certified strength and conditioning specialist. So we've had a lot of success with it. Students are passing like crazy and getting credentialed and getting jobs and or going to graduate school. But now we've tried to feed this pipeline, right? This pipeline from our own people to move to stay with us, but just move to Fort Wayne. So the clinical rehab science major essentially is built to get those students into graduate school, right? It could be physical therapy, athletic training, which are 2 in particular that we have obviously in Fort Wayne. But it could also be occupational therapy, could be chiropractics. We've had students go through our program and become physician assistants, right? With the addition of some courses, right? From biology and chemistry and things like that, which are great. They're more than eligible to do those type of things. So it's been a wild ride since '06, but we're still plugging along and still trying to move ahead of the curve before anybody else, that's for sure. As a clinical athletic trainer, my goal was to always make sure that we had people, working in industry and in the sidelines, whether it be college or high school or professional sports. We actually have quite a bit of people in Major League Baseball from a small university. Yeah, we have a couple, 4 or 5 in particular. We just had one talk, JT Podell, old student of ours, but works with the New York Mets organization. He actually worked for the New Jersey Devils for a while as well with respects to hockey. And he's a PT and an athlete trainer, and so both credentialed. So again, he's living in Florida right now. He just actually spoke at our Health Science Day, so doing fantastic stuff there. Jacob Meyer is working with the Washington Nationals organization. He actually just moved into he was at their high A ball, which is where the tin caps level is, and working in Fredericksburg, and then turned around and just told me while he's driving on Highway 30 that he called me and said, "Hey, I'm passing your house. Was going to stop by, but I'm on my way to Delaware. I just got promoted." And so he got promoted into a different league, essentially, and now he's in Delaware with his family, essentially doing that stuff. Frank Sammons is working with the Cleveland Guardians, and so he is now at AAA in Columbus. And so he was just in Virginia as well at high A ball, and then now is an assistant with them as well. Goodness gracious, I know we have some others. Drew Scott, he played baseball here, was an athletic training major here, but he started working, he was in high ball or AAA ball with the Pirates in Indianapolis for a while, and then got into their national organization, but then now works with the Marlins in Florida. So we have a ton of people in for a small school, and I bring it up only because for a small Division III school, it's not like odd, but most people would assume like those people are from big schools, right? Because they have the connections, maybe like IU or Florida or something like that. But nope, little old Manchester's got a lot of people in Major League Baseball and a lot of good connections. So our students are basically getting opportunities from those, right? Which is great. We have students in Major League Baseball system all the time. We send kids to spring training through the master's degree for clinical rotations. We started obviously with the Pirates and trying to get into some other organizations, but it's just been great opportunities for them. Jacob just asked me about finding a grad to work some short season stuff with the Washington Nationals. And so that's really, I don't say unheard of, but not as heard of as most when you think about a small Division III school in North Manchester, Indiana, right? That our students are at those high levels, right? So it's great to get the name out there, and they do a great job, right? And they just really want more Manchester grads. And goodness gracious, especially for my department, I love it, right? So it's been fantastic. It's a great ride, but we're trying to be that direct feeder into these systems, right? To get them into Fort Wayne, to keep them here, because we know what we can do. And so currently, right now, we have quite a few going from North Manchester to Fort Wayne into things like their physical therapy program, in particular our athletic training program. So currently, I split my time 3 days here at North Manchester and 2 days in Fort Wayne. So as a clinical athletic trainer, essentially, and still being credentialed, they needed a third core faculty member just because we had somebody move on. They're actually in the hiring process to be able to fill that void full time. I just currently am not filling that void full time and being in Fort Wayne the entire time. Honestly, I just truly love my position here in North Manchester. I live just in South Whitley, so it's not that far of a drive, but I really do enjoy being a department chair and trying to think of the next best thing that our students can be a part of, and as well as my department. So like I mentioned before, I don't really like to work behind the curve and follow people. I like to work ahead of the curve. And that kind of leads me to, recently you probably have heard in the news and other articles that we were the first university around this region to have any health science like reduced credit degrees, so those degrees in 3. The Higher Learning Commission just approved not too long ago for universities to be able to offer degrees that were no less than 90 credits. You have to apply and go through all the stuff. But when I heard that, I already had 2 programs really ready to go because it was kind of a vision. And so they were the first 2 the university put out there to the Higher Learning Commission to get approved, which were approved just last summer. And so we've been promoting that and getting a lot of prospective students currently right now. We're getting them again into that and wanting to do what's called applied pre-physical therapy and applied pre-athletic training. So what this is really just a 94 and a 98 credit degree, both with athletic training being 94 and PT being 98. It's meeting all the prerequisites they would have met at Manchester as well. It just slims down some of the electives so that they can basically be a little more effective and efficient in 3 years, and we can save them some money, essentially, because we all know tuition is not getting any cheaper at any institution, but it puts them into Fort Wayne as well a little bit sooner in front of the other market. And then also our DPT program, as you know, is a 2.5-year program. With respects to traditionally their 3-year programs if they've been accredited for quite some time. So older programs, they would have added a year and they're still 3 years, but currently now the accrediting body CAPTI allows you to have a 2.5-year program, and that's 2.5 full years. And so there is summer involved in that as well, but that also saves the students money and time. And so our goal is to get them, again, as qualified as possible. Of course, we're still doing all the work. They're not missing anything that they wouldn't have had with 120 credits. But we really wanted to kind of jump on that and really be some of the first ones out there to do those things, right? There were only, I think, 4 other degrees ahead of us, and none of them were in the health professions. Some of them, I think, were like IT, HR type stuff, computer science type stuff, but we were the first 2 in the health sciences to do that. So we were pretty proud of that and pretty excited, and when they were accepted, we were really excited, that's for sure. So currently right now when I go to Fort Wayne on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I teach more laboratory things. I'm more of a hands-on teacher. Again, do my fair share of didactic teaching for these students as well, but I really like to engage with the students and get more hands-on with them so that they're able to actually do those skills. And so that's currently what I do on Tuesdays and Thursdays when I go up there. But a little bit about our program in particular as we have the sites available. I mean, Lucas has obviously put up here, and Lucas put this together for me so nicely so that I didn't have to do it. But again, he starts off obviously with the mission, right? And it really goes back to everything that we think about when we think about, Manchester University and the idea of, wanting more Manchester grads and really looking at that. And we're trying to incorporate evidence-based practice with, again, the kind of Manchester student that we want to graduate. We truly still believe to this day, if we graduate more Manchester University graduates and get them into the field, we just have a whole bunch of better humans out there. All right, they're just great students, and we still believe that today wholeheartedly, and we're just trying to continue to do that, but just focus them on the field of athletic training so that we can be service workers, just like a lot of other professions that we have. All right, that's what we're trying to really do. As you can see, the CATIE down there, if you don't know, obviously that's our accrediting body, and so that's the Commission on Athletic Training and Education, and they are the ones that govern essentially our curriculum, and CAPTI would be the ones that were for like PT that they're going through right now, but essentially the CATIE is who Dr. Dargo and Julie, the clinical education coordinator, essentially are writing the self-study right now. It's usually written every 10 years. We do annual reports, but every 10 years we get to that point, and we're at that point. Fort Wayne, unfortunately, Fort Wayne had 3 different programs going through accreditation this year, so it's been crazy up there. PT just got theirs done with CAPTI, and there's some other stuff going on. Nutrition just kind of went through theirs with Ascend, and Lucas is putting through, and our program is due this summer, and he's obviously doing great with those things, and so he's working with some other people to get that put together. And we're crossing our fingers and should have no problems, hopefully getting that 10-year extension, and we won't be up for reaccreditation again for another 10 years, hopefully. So that'll be a blessing in disguise for sure. But that's who the Katie is. Again, Lucas always brings in and does a great job with obviously bringing in our mission statement of Manchester University. Again, going through and respecting the infinite worth, and again, getting those students out there. So we really tie everything that we want to do, not only our mission at the Fort Wayne campus and athlete training, what we believe, but we always try to tie it back to our mission statement as a university, right? Just because it's our foundation. And so we're super excited about that. So in the health professions of Fort Wayne, Lucas just kind of put together a little bit here. In 2012, we launched the pharmacy program, which is really what that building was for quite some time before we started integrating more professions up in there. Again, then they started the Master of Science with Pharmacogenomics, and we know that was the first one really launched around this area and really one in the country, and it's been doing fantastic at this point. In 2019, we jumped in with the Athlete Training Masters, and that's when I would say first construction started happening again at the Fort Wayne campus, because we had to add the lab space and do those things. So the Fort Wayne Pharmacy group was fantastic with working with us to get some space to get started, to be able to get that accreditation and to move forward with that. Now, the master's program did start at North Manchester, but we just didn't have the clinical sites around here. We had to go to an area that was a little more advantageous for the students to find clinical sites that were easy to drive to, as opposed to driving from North Manchester to Fort Wayne every single day or out to Warsaw. And it made sense to start housing our health professions there with respect to the hospital systems that were there. And so we kind of jumped on that bandwagon, and it was kind of like, yeah, this makes sense for us. And so now we still send students to North Manchester and work in the athlete training room. I see them all the time. So I see my master's students, whether they like it or not, walking through the hall still and helping our student athletes, which is fantastic. So again, we have our own students doing that service work back with our own athletes on this campus. So it's really, really great. And the ones that come back here are usually some of the ones that have already been here. And they're just super excited to come back to campus, right? You think after 3 to 4 years they might want to be off campus for a while, but they're like, let me go back to the North Manchester campus. I love it. And a lot of them are athletes, so they feel comfortable, I think, right? But we love it, and the student athletes love it. So again, from my perspective, the only thing I would wish is that maybe they're a little more removed from, like I was just here last year or 2 years ago, to give them a little space. But again, they've been doing fantastic work, so it's always been great. You can see in 2020, obviously, we started with our nursing program being launched as well. So again, the undergraduate side of things, we still have young people doing, again, nursing on this campus and then transition to Fort Wayne, but also have the ABSN, again, doing some things in the Fort Wayne campus as well. So Dustin Diller, as one of the associate deans, has been doing fantastic work there, and his faculty have been great. And so we speak to them on the Fort Wayne campus, and we try to do IPE events with all the professions up there. So Lucas does a great job of doing interprofessional education. And just yesterday, I believe, he did an IP event because he runs that consortium in Fort Wayne, and they did an IP event with Trine University. And so they went down to the new health professions building, literally just around the block from the Fort Wayne campus, and did some emergency care stuff. But they bring in their OT, the PT, the pharmacy, their PAs, our athlete trainers. But what they do is they essentially bring students in and they have case studies. And essentially, our athlete training crew would tell them, hey, listen, this is what we would do. Just like a group like this is what our profession would do in this situation, right? You as a pharmacist, where would you engage at this point, right? You as a nurse, where and how would you engage in this situation? And we just utilize these case studies, and it shows how we can collaborate as health professionals and work with one another, even though we're not all from the same school, right? And so we worked and we talk and we go through those cases. And Lucas has been doing a fantastic job with that. And our students tend to like it. Always there's some people that might not want to speak as much as others, depending on what profession you're in and how comfortable you are with that. But our students, he said, did fantastic yesterday with everybody else. And so they run several of those throughout the year. And he kind of puts those and coordinates those together. So again, it's with a lot of different universities too. It's not just us and Trine. So it's always been fantastic work since he's been going and doing that. So that's always great. In 2023, you can see obviously we have nutrition and nutrigenomics. And then in 2024, we started pushing again the DPT, right? So now we were building the DPT obviously before 2024, but again, as we started, you have to get through a certain part of accreditation before you can start having students come in and start recruiting them. So we've been going through that process, which has been great. Again, that would be, I think, the second round of construction, because you have to have a certain amount of spaces for those individuals to do those things. But it's been great. The faculty's fantastic. We're getting a lot of our students to funnel into that. Actually, tonight was an admitted student day for them. I think it started like at 5 or 6. So we were going to have a bunch of students roaming through campus again to do an admitted student day, to kind of see the campus again, go through some, not really orientation, but just go through some stuff with the faculty and staff, and just kind of go around the campus. So I left before that time, but again, it'll be a great event for sure. Now, the nutrition and nutrigenomics has been a great program. Kim Pike does a fantastic job with that. She just hired, I think shortly, I think she's getting ready to hire a second faculty. Her and her colleague right now have been putting things together for Ascend. She came from us from Ball State. So if you hear any of my colleagues around my world, you'll hear a lot of chirp chirp, just because between Lucas and myself, Sydney went to, our RDE went to Ball State as well. I mean, there's Ball State, again, alumni there like crazy. So, and the goal is for us to keep the Manchester alum together as well. But the idea is it's always nice to have some friendly faces and have a little background from that institution as well. But this program, actually, the start of this program really came from our department at Manchester, at North Manchester side. So I promoted and pushed with some other colleagues to start not the master's program, but we actually wanted to start an undergrad degree in nutrition, and we wanted it to be accredited. After doing some research with some consultants years ago that we did, essentially that turned into, the market really showed that master's degrees were coming around, because what Ascend had done, essentially it just changed some things that said, hey, listen, by this time, you have to have a master's degree in something if you want to sit for the registered dietitian nutritionist exam. And so we said, well, why start an undergrad degree then if we can start a master's degree at that point? Because there weren't as many out there in nutrition and nutrigenomics, especially nutrigenomics. And the reason we went that route at the time is because of our pharmacogenomics background. It made sense because we had the genetics background that we could become really unique in that arena. And so that's what we did, right? And so Ascend, we started what's called a future education model, which at the time was one of the first, was a new kind of program that Ascend was putting out. And so that's kind of the route we went, which has worked really, really well. Now, I don't really know the ins and outs of that. Kim Pike does, again, all that work, and she's fantastic. But again, they just went through their accreditation. Now, they're waiting to hear back, but there really wasn't anything that I know that came back that they're really alarmed with whatsoever. So, but Kim is spot on with all that stuff. So, so she's been doing great work. And the funny part is Sydney Tillman, my RD, actually, when she went to Ball State, Kim was one of her instructors. And so it's just kind of come full circle for some of us, which has always been great. So we love it, and we love everything going on, but it's a bit more chaotic in Fort Wayne now, there's so many different health professions in there, but it's a great problem to have, to be honest with you. So we continue to grow, and we continue to move in the right direction. Although obviously nobody is blind to the fact that higher education has taken a hit the last couple of years, and will continue to do that, I'm sure, but we are pushing for growth. All right, we're not looking back, and we want to do the next best thing. So these are kind of what's going on in Fort Wayne right now, which is fantastic. No, like, so in general, so when we first started, the building was really, it was our Fort Wayne campus, but the pharmacy was the only thing in there right now, right, at the time. And so when athletic training came on, we had to just kind of do some like rearranging, so to speak, right? So there wasn't a huge construction with that, but we had to change, so we had to get a lab and do some things, some space for athletic training in particular, because the KD, the accrediting body, they come by and do site visits and things, and we had to have our own space. And so by doing that, we had to kind of take some space from pharmacy a little bit, but they were super nice about, listen, we can cut some lab space, we can do this and make it all work, right? Well, then once PTs got on track, essentially that's when the last big construction happened. We had to have a lot of extra space added on with respects to some extra lab space and things, some reconfiguration going on. But really, it wasn't a huge add-on or anything, but again, we just kind of reconfigured space inside so that everybody could really have their own space and make sure that we were meeting the accreditation standards. And it went well for us, and it looks great still at this point. So yeah, so it's been fantastic, to be honest with you. Yeah. But great question, yeah. Obviously, you can see the front of our building here, essentially. It seems to be a bit probably AI generated, obviously. But again, the front entrance there, you can see on the left-hand side, kind of a little atrium area. Essentially, this is kind of from our recent construction that we had. The left-hand part there with the glass, that's kind of in the eatery area. So a lot of students will kind of just get together there, where we have a little, we had some eatery areas in there with respect to like sisters almost, essentially. But the students will get together in that area for studying purposes, but that's a nice outdoor space too, now that the weather's kind of changing on us. You'll see a lot of students out there studying and doing things out there. The front entrance there, and you'll notice the glass area on the right here, where the gentleman is, or that person there, that right area over there, that is the McFadden Clinic, right? So that is the space essentially we utilize for some health profession stuff like IP events, and other things. So that's the space that was dedicated to Dave McFadden, with respects to the clinic that essentially is, it's still one of those things where the conversations are happening, but essentially the pro bono clinic that was looked to go in there and things, and they're working that space a little bit, and we utilize it for IP events, we use it for simulation work as well, and since we have some other outside people that will come in and utilize that space as well. So still a lot of things forming up there, and things that we're still trying to work with, but it's a great space to have, essentially, as we hopefully continue to grow. It's just space we're going to start utilizing for sure, sooner than later, hopefully. I don't know that I need to tell you guys too much about Fort Wayne. You probably know a lot about Fort Wayne anyway. But again, one of the reasons we moved kind of the athletic training program in particular up there is because it was attracting a lot more people to our program at that point. Again, you have to find the right person to come from across the country, which you'll see where a lot of our students have come from, to pick up on North Manchester and say, yes, I want to move from California and move to North Manchester, right? Great town, right? But it's not something you're just going to pick out on a map. But our credentials that our colleagues have, and the idea of our pass rates and what we do as a program has been noticed nationwide, because we have students coming from as far east as you can imagine and as far west as you can imagine, and as far north and south. And so anywhere from Florida to the East Coast area to, again, northern area up in Wisconsin, and people from Sedona area with respects to, again, from California regions are coming to us. And staying, right? I didn't think that I could have a young lady come from California for all her life and then come here, get this weather, never see snow until she gets here, by the way, right? And then stay to work, right? And so now recently she's moved, but she was working at the old IPFW, now PFW, for quite some time before she went. I think she'd bolt right back to California, but no, she stayed and got a job and loved Indiana. And so it's been fantastic. So to get all those type of people and the diversity that we're getting from across the country is fantastic. It just brings more attention to Manchester University, to be honest with you. Yeah, this is our crazy crew at one point. So again, we do a lot of emergency care and other things, and so we get them all dressed up in splints and helmets and shoulder pads, right? And we teach them this emergency care bit, but again, we try to take the photo ops as best we can so we can show people off a little bit. But this would be a group, and this is our lab. So you'll notice we got some branding in there, but these young people here have already graduated and moved on to the professional life, but essentially this would be an emergency care lab where essentially we work on splinting, bracing, removing helmets, people with head trauma and concussions, spine boarding, and things like that. So we keep them dressed up, and we try to give them a photo opportunity so we can do that. You'll notice that, again, 2 years typically is our program. We do some work during the summer between the first and second year. We try to have about 20 kids per cohort. Now, that across the country, that's a little high. The Katy actually, their average is a bit lower than that across the country, but we really are trying to keep 20 kids at a max in our cohorts because we still want to be small, right? I mean, we don't want 60 people in our program, to be honest with you. It'd be great to have those numbers, but the individual attention is kind of what Manchester is and what it has been since '06 when I've been here, right? And I kind of learned the Manchester way. I mean, we want that individual attention. We want that. And to teach skills like we do, we want some smaller cohorts, right? Now, we don't want to flirt around with 5s and 6s, right? But 20 is really kind of that area where we're comfortable. We can split some labs, but we really get hands-on stuff. But I can really work with students one-on-one, and so can my colleagues. And that's what we want. And so that's just kind of the program we built. That started with Mark Huntington when he started it, right? And so Lucas has done a great job to continue this work, and I know he wants to continue what he's doing, and so it's been great. But again, we're looking at roughly 20 people in there. The demand, as you can see here, through, again, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics really is still high through 2031 with growth. And so we're excited about that, and I think that changes as legislature change. because again, more states are really advocating for athletic trainers to be in their high schools and be mandatory. And that's still not a 50-state thing, right? And so it's one of those things where it's hard because even small schools like Manchester High School, they have one, right? But it's through Parkview. Small rural schools just can't afford those individuals, right? We are getting more young teachers that are getting athletic training degrees as well, so that they can teach, and then they just stay and they do athletic training, right? I mean, it's a long day, but it's just one of those things where we're getting more people like that kind of combine different jobs with those things, and stay till like 11 o'clock at night during the winter and do that stuff, right? It's long days. Again, I'm 48 right now, and today I still say it's a young person's game. You start getting into families and things like that, and it can be a bit cumbersome. I mean, my wife went from working in a high school situation to where she works at O&E right now, as an orthopedic medical assistant, and so she works the surgical team up there. So we are putting students anywhere from, again, clinics, not clinics as in like O&E and Parkviews. We also are putting them in, PT clinics, essentially working, because by insurance law and everything that we have, we have billing rights with respect to that. So we have a lot of students that want to do that. Students get into that world, I think, mainly because they want a little more of the 8 to 5 job maybe, and be able to go home and do those things and not worry about being out late. But again, for any other reasons, I mean, we have people working at Amazon. All those individuals still have the same shoulder type of injuries and back injuries and things, and we can treat those people. And so longer hours, but when you work for industries such as like GMs and in those type of regions, I mean, they come with good pay, pensions, benefits, and so it's very. I mean, we have an old student now, obviously alum now, that works with FedEx, and is doing very, very well and loves it. But he was one of our undergrads, got certified and started working with FedEx. So again, what people here in athletic training is that we only work with athletes, right? And it is, again, the majority, I would say, of what most people think about, right? And what our students think about. But the reality is that we have so many people working in not only athletics, but again, in industry, right? And in places such as PT clinics and orthopedic clinics and those type of things. But there are tons of military, right? I mean, we have people, that if somebody has an injury, we can fix it. We can help. Right? And so we have people across the country doing these type of things. And we're continuing to work with, again, other universities that are being accredited across the world. Right? Not currently, but recently, not in the recent past, I've been working with 2 different schools. One is UCJC in Madrid, Spain. I've been working with a school named Blanquerna in Barcelona. And just talking to them as I do study abroad about possibility of getting students over there to work with them, right? Especially same thing. There's a school called Dublin City University in Ireland that I've been working with and I go to every single year, and we chat and we sit down. I'm hopeful actually now that my last little girl is getting out of my house and going to college, I may be thinking about a sabbatical here. I've been up for it for a while, but haven't done it. But I would love to go teach abroad, to be honest with you, and teach some of my courses at places like Dublin. It's, again, a great country and a great area to be in, but we are trying to get students there as well. And just, you have a few roadblocks when it comes to like J1 and F1 status for students and things, and that takes some extra steps. But I really want to be one of those schools that are like small schools that is doing that, so that these students have the opportunity to see the world as well, and not just our own country, right? It's great. But again, I think as you had mentioned, Janet, traveling the world a little bit and seeing different things, it's just so fun to do. And so we're still trying to do those things. So again, still growing. Oops, too fast. Again, resources that we have in Fort Wayne are really everything that we have here, anywhere from, again, Lucas wants to make sure, obviously, we have an Office of Experiential Education. We have our own IT down up there and everything else. We have mental health counseling, peer mentoring, peer tutoring. So all those students are getting the exact same things that our students in North Manchester are getting, right? And so we want to make sure that there's no cutoff of something that you would be getting here and not getting there, right? So again, all those services are, again, at a fingertips reach for our students in Fort Wayne and North Manchester. Now, this is kind of hard to read, as you can see. It's a bit small, but again, this is just our 2-year curriculum. Our curriculum is based essentially with the students are there for 7 weeks, and then they swap. So if cohort 1 essentially is in the classroom, so that's my first year students, they would be in the classroom with me for 7 weeks. And then that means the second years that came back would then turn around and be in the clinical site. And so it just means that there's only one cohort on campus at a time so that we can get the didactic stuff done while the others are doing clinicals. And I'll show you a map here shortly that shows you kind of across the country where our students are. But at this point, we have 7 weeks in, 7 weeks out, and then they swap, and then they go 7 weeks in, 7 weeks out, and then their second year, they flip-flop. So if you were in the clinic before, or out in clinicals before, now you're in the classroom. And so again, it keeps the campus nice and even keel, so that way we have all the didactic stuff in 7 weeks, and then we turn around and do that. So back and forth over those 2 years. And so it's worked out pretty well for us. Now, other universities do things a little differently. Some of them will be similar to us, but then some of them may have their students out for an entire semester in their last year. It just really kind of depends. Every program really has the autonomy to do what they want as long as it gets approved by the accrediting body, right? So that's kind of how we run ours in that 2-year stint. I'll have a better map for this, so we'll go to a better map at this. Again, once students apply from our program, essentially, you know, they interview with our faculty and our crew up there. They can get a provisional admittance, obviously. We really want to feed that hub of people from here and going to Fort Wayne. Obviously, they can be denied, which hopefully we never look at that, and obviously we can have a committee hold on them, but that just kind of is our process. We have rolling admissions with respect to the idea that they come in as a cohort, but they can apply in November, let's say, or even October. We could interview them, we could accept them as you said, a provisional admittance, just because they may be in some courses that they still need to pass. And we haven't really had any issues with that, but we hold our, usually up through March is usually when we kind of start setting the deadlines, to where we kind of hold back on applications, but we've taken them all the way through June. As long as we can get them in, and they have their classes done before the start of the fall, or we bring them in a little early for orientation, we're willing to do that, right? I mean, we want to get as many students as we can, and it's benefited us quite a bit. So again, Lucas and Julie do a great job at that. Again, we utilize a program called CORE. Obviously not super important for you guys, but that's where we keep all of our documentation with respects to their waivers and their contract stuff, and we check things off in there. So there's standards that we check off. We really make sure and go through that process. We utilize it as a central hub, basically, kind of like we might use Canvas for a class, right? It's really where we start checking things off for the students to make sure that we don't miss anything and that we've taught you everything you need to check, and also to know that we've checked that several times, right? We never teach one thing one time. I mean, that just, with us, learning over time is key. And so they'll touch on things their first semester, their second semester, third, and they'll come right back and do that same stuff over and over again. But we're checking those boxes several times so that we know that those students are getting hit with those skills and that knowledge several times before they become a professional. Prerequisites for us, essentially, we want them to have a C or better at minimum. Essentially, we want that 3.0 GPA as well as a minimum. Most of our students do much better than that, but essentially we use those as just standards and guidelines to make sure that we have that level of standard at minimum so that we can really talk about what it is that they may need to get better at, or maybe even take a different class or to retake it. But that's kind of the minimum standards with respects to our admittance. These are the prerequisite classes that we have. These are the classes the students would take at North Manchester. So again, typical anatomy and physiology. They get into some ex-phys, some kinesiology. They get into some psychology. Always have to have a mathematics in there. Now that's a Data 210 or a stats level. Now these are pretty standard across most programs. They usually take an extra biology course outside of anatomy and phys, and then they take a chemistry class. Now my students that come through the program have to have a year of chemistry, and that's at the 105 and 106 level. But if they think about going to PT school, we typically then push them to take Gen Chem, just because the PT world usually wants a little higher level of chemistry. Now the Katie recently, I would probably say maybe 2 or so years ago, added in the idea of adding physics. And so essentially they needed at least one class in physics to take before they do that. So yeah. So this is kind of the prerequisites that they need to do, and obviously they can get that any and all from that from North Manchester, right, which is great. So you can notice that from an exercise science perspective, we collaborate obviously a lot with physics and chemistry and biology and psychology to get these students essentially what they need, and then they finish off in our clinical and rehab science major, essentially, and they take courses with me in like orthopedic evaluation and orthopedic intervention. And what I try to do is I really try to just get them in the classroom The upstairs lab that we have currently right now has really a lot of blue treatment tables. And what I try to do is really talk about a subject or a topic, and then I turn around and say, okay, let's get on the table and let's do some examination stuff, right? And so these students here, I think, are ahead of the curve, which is what I like to say, because they're getting classes that are not normal classes with respect to that. They're getting really specific in strategic courses to get ready to go into the master's program. So those students, I think, are just maybe a shade better prepared than some, depending on what program they've come from, because a general exercise science degree would not have courses like I have. But that has everything to do with my trade and the fact that I'm department chair. And so I see the importance of that, which is why we added it years ago. And so it's been great to have those things, just because I think our students are coming in well more prepared in those areas. And they pick up on things pretty quickly when we get to that point. So it's always been great. As you can see, this is kind of the 18 students enrolled in our last cohort. Just kind of gives the breakdown of kind of where students are when it comes to like gender and culture. It just goes to the diversity of our program, as Lucas has this kind of broken down and kind of where they're coming from within the country here. Again, this works on just our matriculation wise. Again, Manny shows up ever so often here. You can see here in the middle picture, we're working with some simulation stuff where we're working on some dislocated shoulders. And so we're having our students work on basically relocating that shoulder in that sim. And you can see over here, this young lady right here, Kaylin Ford, she actually works at the university here with us now, because she's obviously gone and passed with her exam. But they're working with some nursing students, as you can see here, and doing some simulation stuff. So again, you can see here this blue pad is really a vacuum splint, and then we have some nursing students here working with them. So more than likely an IPE event with respects to that. So we'll utilize the Miro Center ever so often as well in Fort Wayne, which has always been a good collaboration with us with Parkview. Let's see, this crazy map here is always nice, because this really shows you all of our clinical sites and people that we have agreements with that we can send students to. So you'll notice anywhere from like high schools up in north, we really are focused on that Northeast Indiana, but we do have some students that come in from the Indianapolis area. So we work with, we've done things with Pro Team Tactical. Our students get to work with people in EMS and fire and police. And so they're doing rehabilitation on them as well. So that's always been a great example of what we can do as well with those individuals. Again, MyoFit, some areas in Indianapolis, as well as University of Indianapolis, we've done some swapping of some students there with respect to some clinical sites as well. So again, we have affiliation agreements with a lot of different places. You can see these ones circled over here are really everybody within really that kind of that Fort Wayne area. And you'll notice even with the Fort Wayne Ballet, which is pretty cool. Right, so we have some students that will come through and really be interested in the fine arts, and what some don't understand is that we can work with ballet companies and song and dance and everything, right? Because if they're active and they get hurt, we can fix them, right? We can do that stuff. And so it's just not, I guess, your traditional site to do, but it's always nice to see, because we've had some people work with them and love it. So it's always been great. So a great agreement with them. This just kind of gives you an idea of national-wise. We've sent some students. We had a couple young women that wanted to go to Hawaii for clinicals. Well, they made the contact and they went out. So we're hopeful that they had all their clinical stuff done, right, and didn't just sit on the beach, right? But they obviously did everything they needed to do, and they did the background work on that. Right? They worked with the University of Hawaii, and they really worked on finding that site. And then the clinical education director at the time really worked well to get that site set up. They had to get themselves out there. I believe Hawaii gave them a place to stay on campus, so that they didn't like waste every single dollar that they had, because it's a bit expensive, as we know. But yeah, so it's been a great experience. And again, ironically enough, I'm going out there with a group of students this June for a study away opportunity, which would be kind of cool. We're doing 7 days in Oahu, 7 days in Maui, and doing some historical and cultural things. But again, going to the University of Hawaii to visit as well, and chat about their sports medicine stuff. So yeah, so a good connection there. We've had students go out to North Texas University and do some things. Back down again, Southern Illinois, up to Michigan State. So yeah, so we're getting some big schools and some big opportunities for these students. So we're super excited to be able to send them across the country for sure. We're getting close there, right? I've done pretty good on the time. I wanted to talk a little bit about, just because you brought up study away and study abroad, you know, of kind of what we do in the department. So years ago, Ryan Hedstrom and he worked in sport management. He and I got together and we started our own kind of program together, right? And now we'd already been doing study abroad, obviously on campus for years, so you all know that. But Ryan and I got together and said, man, we should do something. Maybe we piggyback off somebody. And I said, man, why don't we just do our own, right? So what Ryan and I did is we started working with an individual from the Sports Travel Academy, and I still work with this guy to this day. But we essentially started off by going to England and Ireland for our first 2 years. And what we did is we visited not only the country and did the historical stuff and the cultural things, went out to the Cliffs of Moher with respects to, again, Western Ireland and those things. But we also went to DCU and UCD and listened to the physiotherapists talk. But we also went to like the Leinster Rugby Club. And went to the Leinster Rugby Club. Essentially what happened is Ryan took his sport management kids to the front office and talked about ticketing and marketing and branding. And then I took my kids to the physiotherapists. And we did dry needling. And we just talked about how they treat their athletes and how their rehab protocols are. So it was a great opportunity where we'd go to the Cliffs of Moher together. We'd go to Irish Nights dancing and learn about their culture and history and the Gaelic language and all these things. And then we'd turn around and we'd split off and we'd do our own thing, right? And we gave these students tons of opportunities to do these things. And I've continued to do that. Every year I try to go somewhere different. But since 2015, when Ryan and I kind of started our little thing together, we went to Ireland and England twice. But since then, I've been to Greece, Italy, Spain, Australia, England again, Scotland, Wales, Germany, Amsterdam, going to Hawaii this year, going back to Italy in 27 to Venice, Florence, Rome, Naples, Pompeii. And Sydney Tillman's going with me on that one because that one will be a little more also focused on food since she's a dietitian and you can get some good food there. So we have set up currently right now in the tentative itinerary at least one food tour, 2 different food cooking classes. We did a food cooking class in Barcelona, Spain when we did that, and that was fantastic. Students loved it, making paella and doing all these things. But those experiences have brought back so much for the students since I started doing that in my department. I've had some people I call repeat offenders have gone to different trips with me to different countries because it's just really enjoyable. I give the students a lot of free time to be able to be real tourists, but safely with other friends and with other colleagues. But we do a lot of history, a lot of culture, a lot of tours. We go to the universities and we see how they do things, and we really want to kind of see how healthcare and how other areas do their medicine as well as us, and just kind of compare and contrast those things. But in reality, it's really just about being together and just really finding out and finding new friends. Because what we've done is we've had people come back to become lifelong friends that even on a small campus like this may have never even chatted to one another. And then all of a sudden they come back, right? And as of probably about a couple trips ago, every trip I've gone on, we've come back and we've had relationships happen, right? So we usually end up coming back and someone's dating somebody. So, but it's a great way to get us together and to get us out of the country and travel in a safe way and essentially just kind of explore the world where some of these kids may not leave their own counties that they're from, right? And I did not want that for my students. And I didn't want it for my family. So the great advantage of doing what I do essentially is I take my family with all my trips with us. And so we pay for our family to go on these trips because I want my 2 and my wife to be able to experience this as well. I didn't want to take all the glory and be able to leave the country and see all these great places without taking them. So ever since my wife has been on several with me, and since Australia, I think I ruined it for my own 2 kids because I took them to Australia first, and I don't know that they'll really think anything's better than that. But nothing like taking those trips with your family as well as your extended family with Manchester University. So it's been great working with Thelma in the past, with Study Abroad and Study Away, and now work with Pam Haynes. It's been great. She's a huge advocate for it, and she's awesome. And they do anything and everything to bend over backwards to make sure that we can make these trips happen for these students. And so it's been great. That's a great question. Some of them I don't know, right? The reality of it is they do get more expensive every single year. I mean, the trips I used to take to Ireland in 2015, they may have paid $2,500. And those trips today are easily $3,500 to $4,000, right? Now, one great way that we do that, to be completely honest, is we have a ton of scholarships we offer. And so the students can apply every year for at least a handful of scholarships that we have that are directed towards Study Away. And in particular, also some that go through for the health sciences. And so our students are eligible for those. And so we encourage them. They don't all do it. We encourage them to apply for those all the time. And some students get anywhere from maybe $250, but all the way up to maybe $1,500, right? It just kind of depends on what's available at the time and essentially how many people apply. And so they do subsidize those quite a bit. We have a few students, obviously, that get a McFadden scholarship, right? That's a scholarship that they give away every single year, from what I understand. But it's usually given to kind of like somebody that's coming into Manchester, and they can use it within that 4 years, whichever way they want. And so some students can come up to even maybe like $2,000, $2,500 worth of a McFadden scholarship that they can get to put towards a study abroad or study away opportunity. Now, we went from calling it study abroad to study away mainly because we have a lot of domestic things that happen as well. Teaching education, obviously, they'll turn around, and they just went to Austin, Texas, and they visit other public schools across the country, essentially, to kind of see how things are done. And so not everything is abroad at that point. And obviously, with us in Hawaii, obviously, that makes sense too. But yeah, so it's not an easy situation, but we try to tell them to look for scholarships as well that are out there. We do some crowdfunding to try to equally distribute funds that we can get from alumni and friends. And so hypothetically speaking, if we had $1,000 that got donated into our crowdfunding, essentially we would evenly distribute that to our students to be able to cut that cost a little bit. Now, the good thing about my trips, I think, they're a little more expensive probably, but they're pretty much an all-inclusive. So it pays for, again, hotels or hostels. It pays for, again, flights. It pays for all of our excursions. So to give you an example, in Dublin, we'll take an Irish Days tours, and we'll go out to the Cliffs of Moher. We'll do experiencing the Gaelic Games. We'll go to an Irish Nights dancing, and the students that's all paid for, right, with part of what they're paying for. So I could give them a cheaper ticket, but then they would just pay for those things individually when they got there. And then we also, we spread it out to where right now, currently, the last 2 trips I've done, I've spread it out to where they're paying over an entire year. So it's not like I'm asking someone to give me $4,500 today. So what I do is we have to know a year in advance where we're going, essentially, and propose that, get it approved. So by December 1 of last year, my Italy trip was approved already. And so students already know after the first year what trips are available. And then they say, hey, I want to go on your trip, Dr. Beer. And then I say, okay, well, let's start that saving process. Like, here's what you need over 12 months. So it kind of cuts those pieces into fragments. So it's a little bit easier to take, right? Now, again, some students and their families can just write checks and do that, right? But some, they do not. And so it takes, again, a little more strategy to raise some funds for those things. But we really try to do everything we can to let and help everybody travel for us at all. I tell my students, listen, I think you should try to think about making a trip somewhere within the 4 years you're here. If you're here 4 years, it's just too good of an opportunity to pass away. And they're fantastic trips. We love them, right? And when my students come back, they're in love with it. So it's always been great. What other kind of questions? Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, shoot. Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned it, that they are encouraged, the high schools are being encouraged to have athletic trainers. Would that be a clinical opportunity for some of your students?
Absolutely.
Get practicum credit or something like that? Yeah.
No, that's a great question. Yeah, so, we're trying to get an athlete trainer at every school. And so those are opportunities, like job opportunities for our students graduate, right, and become certified when they pass our exams. But yes, so to give you an example, if we had somebody pass the exam, get a job at Manchester High School, let's say Kevin Watson, that's there currently, has been there for years, quit, and we put one of our people in there. Essentially, that opens up a spot for us for that to be a clinical site. Right, and so the more Manchester grads we have and we put out there in the world, right, those are all clinical sites for us, essentially. Because again, I don't know that I've found any of them that would say that they wouldn't want to be a preceptor for us. Now, so, and the other opportunity is, yes, it goes back to internships and what we're doing, a lot of experiential education, right? So President Young's big push for us is to really have a lot more opportunities in experiential education. Now, internships and practicums are experiential education as well, but a lot of us are creating courses to be able to give more opportunity for our students to do that. And an opportunity such as, hey, listen, could you work in a clinic as a rehab tech, right? Make some money, but also get some applied experiential education credit, right? So these students are earning college credit, right? Especially for the applied degrees, and they're able to make money on that. And the goal of that is, now you're working, you're getting credit, but you're able to hopefully take some of that money and pay down your tuition. So it makes you get out into the world, get experience, but then again kind of saves that bill on the other end. So that way we're trying to cut some costs for those students as well by letting them have that credit time to be able to make some of that money, so that again, hopefully it's not so much of a burden when it comes to tuition time, right? Because we do realize it's rising costs across the country at that point. But yeah, we try to find any and every avenue we can for these students to get hands-on experiences out in the country and out in these schools, for sure. Any other questions you can think about? Yeah. So the question obviously was like on our trips, we're in, I'm currently in teaching mode and I'm also in like a travel mode. Absolutely, 100%. So I've been to Ireland so much, to be honest with you. It's so fun. And I learn more about the Irish culture as I go, right? But I would never say I'm an Irish historian. So I would never try to tell someone a story, a historian type of story or whatever about Ireland, right? I wouldn't want to get it out of context and the idea of like what that really is. But we do pre-work before we get there, right? And then we meet while we're in these trips and we have kind of conversations about, hey, listen, we talked about, the history of this monument or the history of this significant situation, right? And then we have people that give us tours as well. But yeah, we sit and we kind of debrief the day from time to time and talk about like, hey, listen, what is it that you did today? Now, early on, we actually did some, not podcasts, but we kind of did some blogging, right? And so Ryan and I put together a situation where students had to blog every day, and then we would have conversations and do write-ups on those things as well. But yeah, I try to be the best tour guide I can. In Ireland, it's easier for me, but I won't lie. The first time I went to London, the students looked at the tube, and they looked at the map, and they said, how in the world am I going to navigate this thing? And I was like, well, guess what? We're going to figure it out together, because I've never done this either, right? And within 24 hours, you're a pro, right? It's not that hard to do, but it can be a bit overwhelming when you're in the situation. So yeah, I try to be that mentor, that comforter, the tour guide, and try to get them out of their comfort zone a little bit to be explore the situations. But yeah, I don't lecture when I'm there though. I leave that up to the people that we kind of, I don't say hire, but we work with at the universities. I want them to hear from an Irishman or an Irish person. I don't want them to hear about Irish stuff from me. I want them to hear from the people at UCD and DCU because they know their stuff, right? And I want them to hear about the culture from somebody that's lived in that country their entire life, right? So yeah, so we get those individuals to work with us so that they're hearing information from them. These students hear from me every single day. They don't want to listen to me talk anymore. and they love it. They love it for sure. Yeah. Oh, absolutely, especially in the world of athlete training, right? I mean, when I go to UCD and DCU, and we talk to the DCU individuals at Dublin City University, like people like Shafan and those individuals that I speak with, when they speak to our students, they see the commonality between there. And it's because there's so much crossover in what we do, right? And especially since DCU is working towards and working with the CATI, right? So it's the same accrediting body, just different countries. So they just see things differently. But the sports they play are way different, right? So the injuries are roughly the same, but they see some different things. So they play a sport called hurling, and it's supposed to be the fastest game on grass, right? I have a hurley in my office right now, and I love to play hurling, right? It's great. It's awesome. And so when we do the experience in the Gaelic Games, we get to do those things. But the injuries are a bit different than it is with like baseball or football. And so they start to see those things. But even the non-traditional type of injuries. So in Hawaii, we'll speak to some people about just surfing injuries. I mean, we obviously don't surf here, right? And so the reality is they get to see those things, or doing aquatic therapy in the ocean. Way different than going to Peabody Strauss and doing aquatic therapy, right? So the environment's just different, but there's so much crossover in common areas, like you said, that they see those, but then they start to see the differences based off the culture of people, the history of people, and how they just see medicine and do things. Way different. So in Europe, when we go over, our students notice that they work a lot with their hands. Their biggest tools are their hands. And in the States, we kind of use our hands, but we utilize modalities a lot, such as, like e-stim and ultrasounds and those type of things. But the Europeans really do it in such a way where their best modalities are their hands. And they really want that hands-on experience with their patients. Now, we do that in the States, don't get me wrong. But they do it, I think, at a level that our students haven't seen before. And they're like, oh my goodness, look at them like mobilize this or manipulate this or do these things with their hands. They just really feel the connection with their patients when they do that. And when my students see that, I just see growth, right? Growth in the way they think, growth in their mindset, and this everything that they can take into their profession when they become professionals. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anything else? Well, I really appreciate you guys having me here. I'll be honest with you, I was like, man, talking for an hour, I don't know. But my students say the same thing, and then I talk for an hour, and then we're done, right? So no one's ever told me that I can't talk, that's for sure. So I'm kind of glad Lucas had kindergarten night so I could do this for you guys. It's been great being here and kind of sharing what we do at North Manchester campus and making the connection to Fort Wayne. And by all means, if there's any chance that we can come back and talk again on anything like this, please let me know. We'd love it. Thank you very much. Thanks. Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.